What if I told you that your entire life trajectory could change with just one conversation? That the difference between getting promoted or passed over, winning an argument or losing it, commanding respect or being ignored, all comes down to a skill that most people never master? That skill is strategic communication. The ability to think fast, talk smart, and influence any situation in your favor. Every single day, you're in communication battles without even realizing it. In meetings, during negotiations, in casual conversations, even in text messages. And right now, while you're listening to this, 99% of people are losing these battles. They're stumbling over words, missing opportunities, failing to persuade, and watching others take control of situations that should be theirs. But here's what the top 1% of communicators know. Communication isn't about being the loudest person in the room or having the biggest vocabulary. It's about understanding the psychological triggers that drive human behavior, mastering the techniques that create instant rapport, and developing the mental frameworks that allow you to respond brilliantly under pressure. It's about becoming someone others naturally listen to, respect, and follow. The difference between average communicators and masters isn't talent or natural charisma. It's strategy. It's knowing exactly what to say, how to say it, and when to say it to get the outcome you want. By the time you finish this audiobook, you will have that strategic advantage. You will think faster, speak smarter, and communicate with the confidence and precision of someone who always wins the conversation. Chapter 1. The Split-Second Advantage. How elite communicators process information faster. Most people think communication is about talking, but elite communicators know the truth. It's about processing. Before a single word leaves your mouth, your brain is running complex calculations, analyzing social dynamics, predicting responses, and selecting the optimal strategy. The difference between someone who stumbles through conversations and someone who dominates them isn't speaking ability, it's processing speed. Your brain receives over 11 million pieces of information every second. But most people only consciously process about 40 bits of that information. This means they're missing 99.9% of the data that could give them a massive communication advantage. Elite communicators have trained themselves to capture and process exponentially more information in real time, giving them what I call the split-second advantage. The first level of advanced processing is contextual awareness. While average communicators focus only on the words being spoken, masters are simultaneously reading body language, vocal tonality, micro-expressions, group dynamics, power structures, and underlying motivations. They're asking themselves, what is this person really trying to achieve? What are they not saying? Who are they trying to impress? What are their fears, desires, and pressure points? This level of awareness requires training your brain to operate on multiple channels simultaneously. Practice the 3-layer listening technique. Layer 1 is the literal words being spoken. Layer 2 is the emotional subtext and what they're really feeling. Layer 3 is the strategic context and what they're trying to accomplish. Most people get stuck on layer 1, but masters operate on all 3 layers at once. The second critical processing skill is pattern recognition. Elite communicators have developed an extensive database of communication patterns, personality types, and behavioral triggers. When someone speaks, they instantly categorize that person's communication style, predict their likely responses, and adjust their approach accordingly. They recognize the patterns of someone who needs to feel important, someone who responds to logic versus emotion, someone who's defensive, someone who's testing them. Build your pattern recognition by studying the communication styles around you. Notice how different personality types respond to different approaches. The analytical person who wants data and evidence. The relationship-focused person who needs to feel heard and understood. The results-driven person who wants bottom-line conclusions. The creative person who responds to stories and possibilities. The more patterns you can recognize instantly, the more precisely you can tailor your communication. The third element is predictive processing. Masters don't just react to what's happening now. They're already 3 moves ahead, anticipating objections, preparing responses, and steering conversations toward their desired outcomes. They think like chess players, always considering their opponent's next likely moves and positioning themselves advantageously. Develop predictive processing by gaming out conversations before they happen. Before important meetings or discussions, run mental simulations. What are the likely objections or challenges you'll face? How can you preemptively address them? What are the different directions the conversation could go? And how will you guide it back to your objectives? This preparation creates the appearance of thinking fast, when really you're thinking ahead. The fourth level is emotional processing. Most people get hijacked by their own emotions, or the emotions of others. But elite communicators maintain what I call emotional overhead. They can feel the emotional dynamics in the room without being controlled by them. They recognize when someone is trying to trigger them, when emotions are being used strategically, and when emotional responses would hurt their position. Master emotional processing by developing what psychologists call emotional granularity. Instead of just feeling good or bad, train yourself to identify specific emotions with precision. Are you feeling frustrated, disappointed, or betrayed? Is the other person feeling anxious, defensive, or overwhelmed? The more precisely you can identify emotions, the more strategically you can respond to them. Finally, elite communicators have developed what I call response flexibility. While most people have 1 or 2 communication modes, masters have dozens of different approaches they can deploy instantly based on what the situation requires. They can shift from logical to emotional, from direct to indirect, from collaborative to authoritative, all within the same conversation, depending on what will be most effective. This isn't about being manipulative or fake. It's about being strategically adaptive. Just like a skilled driver changes gears based on road conditions, skilled communicators change approaches based on social conditions. They read the room, assess what's needed, and adjust accordingly. This level of flexibility only comes from having a large toolkit of communication strategies and the processing speed to select the right one in real time. Chapter 2. The Instant Influence Framework. Psychological triggers that work in seconds. Human beings are psychological creatures, and every single person you communicate with is running on predictable mental software. While most people try to influence others through force, logic, or manipulation, elite communicators understand that true influence happens at the subconscious level through psychological triggers that bypass rational resistance and create automatic responses. The first and most powerful trigger is reciprocity. The human brain is hardwired to return favors and respond to gifts, even symbolic ones. But here's what most people get wrong. They try to use reciprocity by giving something and immediately asking for something back. Elite communicators understand that reciprocity works best when it's unexpected and when there's a delay between the giving and the asking. Master reciprocity by becoming genuinely useful to others before you need anything from them. Share valuable information, make helpful introductions, offer sincere compliments, or simply give your full attention. The key is that your giving must feel genuine, not transactional. When you later need something from that person, they'll feel psychologically compelled to help because the reciprocity debt is still active in their subconscious mind. The second trigger is social proof. People look to others to determine appropriate behavior, especially in uncertain situations. Instead of telling someone what to do, show them what others like them have already done. But not just any others, specifically others they respect or identify with. The closer the social proof matches their identity, the more powerful it becomes. Use social proof by collecting and strategically deploying stories of people similar to your listener who have taken the action you want them to take. If you're trying to persuade a cautious decision maker, tell them about another cautious person who carefully evaluated the same decision and chose your path. If you're dealing with someone who prides themselves on being innovative, show them how forward-thinking people are already doing what you're suggesting. The third trigger is commitment and consistency. Once people take a position or make a commitment, they feel psychological pressure to remain consistent with that position, even if circumstances change. Elite communicators don't try to push people toward decisions. They lead them to convince themselves and then commit to positions that align with their goals. Activate this trigger by asking questions that lead people to state positions that support your objectives. Instead of telling someone they should exercise more, ask them if they think regular exercise is important for long-term health. When they say yes, and they will, they've just committed to a position that makes it psychologically difficult to refuse exercise-related suggestions. You're not changing their mind. You're helping them recognize what they already believe. The fourth trigger is authority. People automatically defer to perceived expertise and authority figures, but real authority isn't about titles or credentials. It's about demonstrated competence and confident communication. You can establish authority in any conversation by showing depth of knowledge, speaking with conviction, and using what I call authoritative language patterns. Build instant authority by mastering your subject matter so thoroughly that you can speak about it with genuine confidence. Use specific examples, precise numbers, and insider knowledge that demonstrates you're not just repeating what you've heard elsewhere. Speak in declarative statements rather than tentative suggestions. Instead of, "I think maybe you should consider," say, "The most effective approach is," authority is communicated through certainty, not volume. The fifth trigger is scarcity. People want what they can't have and value what's limited. But crude scarcity tactics like limited time offer are obvious and often backfire. Elite communicators create sophisticated scarcity by highlighting the unique aspects of opportunities, the costs of delay, or the competitive nature of situations. Create authentic scarcity by helping people understand the real limitations they face. Time is always scarce. Attention is always limited. Opportunities often have natural windows. Instead of creating artificial urgency, help people recognize the genuine time sensitivity of their situations and the real costs of indecision or delay. The sixth trigger is liking. People say yes to people they like. But liking isn't about being nice or agreeable. Research shows that we like people who are similar to us, who complement us genuinely, and who we perceive as being on our side. Elite communicators build rapid rapport by finding genuine commonalities, giving authentic recognition, and positioning themselves as allies rather than adversaries. Master the liking trigger by becoming genuinely curious about others and finding authentic points of connection. Look for shared experiences, similar challenges, common goals, or mutual contacts. Give specific, genuine compliments about things you actually admire. Most importantly, position conversations as collaborative problem-solving rather than adversarial negotiations. The final trigger is loss aversion. People are psychologically wired to fear loss more than they value gain. Instead of only talking about what someone will gain from taking action, elite communicators help them understand what they'll lose by not acting. But this isn't about fear-mongering. It's about helping people see the full cost of their current trajectory. Use loss aversion ethically by helping people understand the opportunity costs of inaction. What will they miss if they don't change? What will deteriorate if they don't address current problems? What advantages will their competitors gain if they don't act? Paint a realistic picture of the status quo's true costs, and suddenly taking action becomes not just attractive, but necessary. Chapter 3. Strategic Listening, the secret weapon of persuasion masters. Most people think great communicators are great talkers, but the opposite is true. The most persuasive people in the world are strategic listeners who use their ears as weapons of influence. While everyone else is waiting for their turn to speak, masters are gathering intelligence, building rapport, and positioning themselves for maximum impact when they do speak. Strategic listening isn't passive. It's an active process of extraction, analysis, and positioning. You're not just hearing words, you're mining for motivations, mapping power structures, identifying pressure points, and collecting the exact ammunition you'll need to craft irresistible arguments. Every conversation becomes an intelligence-gathering operation that gives you massive advantages. The first level of strategic listening is emotional archaeology. You're digging beneath surface words to uncover the real emotional drivers behind what people are saying. Someone complaining about their boss isn't just venting. They're revealing their power struggles, their career fears, their need for recognition, or their desire for autonomy. Someone discussing market challenges isn't just sharing information. They're exposing their strategic priorities, their resource constraints, and their decision-making criteria. Train yourself to hear emotions behind words by listening for what I call emotional markers. Listen for energy changes in their voice. What topics make them speak faster or slower? What causes their voice to rise or fall? What words do they emphasize? What do they avoid talking about? These patterns reveal their true priorities and emotional hot buttons, which become your keys to influence. The second level is value archaeology. Everyone has a hierarchy of values that drives their decisions, but most people never articulate these values clearly. Strategic listeners extract these values through careful questioning and observation. They discover whether someone values security over opportunity, recognition over money, autonomy over collaboration, or progress over stability. Uncover values by listening for language patterns that reveal priorities. What outcomes do they describe as ideal? What situations do they describe as problems? What do they complain about most frequently? What do they brag about? The things people complain about reveal their unmet values, and the things they brag about reveal their satisfied values. Map their value system, and you can predict their decisions. The third level is authority mapping. In every conversation, there are multiple layers of influence and authority. Who does this person need approval from? Who influences their thinking? What groups do they identify with? What experts do they respect? Understanding their authority structure tells you exactly how to position your ideas for maximum acceptance. Map authority by listening for reference points. Who do they quote? What sources do they mention? What groups do they identify with? What approval do they seek? When they say, "we," who are they referring to? The people and groups they reference reveal their psychological tribes and influence networks. Align your arguments with their authority figures, and you're borrowing their credibility. The fourth level is strategic questioning that doesn't feel like interrogation. Most people ask obvious questions that put others on the defensive. Strategic listeners ask questions that make people feel heard, understood, and important, while simultaneously extracting the exact information they need to craft persuasive arguments. Master strategic questioning by using the excavation sequence. Start with broad, open questions that get people talking. What's your take on this situation? Then narrow down with specific follow-ups. What's the most challenging part of that? Then dig for emotions. How does that make you feel? Finally, extract values. What would an ideal solution look like? This sequence feels like natural conversation while systematically gathering intelligence. The fifth technique is mirroring and matching. People feel more comfortable and open with those who communicate in similar styles. Strategic listeners adapt their communication patterns to match the other person's pace, energy level, vocabulary, and structure. This isn't mimicry. It's strategic adaptation that creates subconscious rapport. Practice adaptive listening by matching their communication style. If they speak quickly, increase your pace. If they use specific details, ask for specifics. If they speak in big concepts, respond conceptually. If they're analytical, be logical. If they're emotional, acknowledge feelings. This adaptation happens gradually and naturally, not dramatically or obviously. The sixth skill is silence as a strategic weapon. Most people are uncomfortable with silence and will fill it with valuable information, admissions, or concessions. Strategic listeners use calculated pauses to create pressure that encourages others to reveal more than they intended. They understand that whoever speaks first often loses leverage. Use strategic silence by simply waiting after someone finishes speaking. Count 3 seconds before responding. Often, they'll add crucial information just to fill the silence. After asking important questions, resist the urge to rephrase or add clarification. Let the silence do the work. This technique is particularly powerful during negotiations or when trying to get someone to commit to a position. The final mastery level is listening for lies, omissions, and manipulation attempts. People rarely lie outright, but they often omit important information, exaggerate certain aspects, or use language to create false impressions. Strategic listeners develop an ear for these deceptions and can adjust their strategies accordingly. Detect deception by listening for inconsistencies in their story, unusually defensive responses, or language that seems designed to impress rather than inform. Listen for what they're not saying. What obvious questions are they not asking? What natural concerns are they not raising? What details are they skipping? Often, what people don't say is more revealing than what they do say. Strategic listening transforms every conversation into an advantage. While others are focused on what they want to say next, you're gathering the exact intelligence you need to craft irresistible arguments, build genuine connections, and position yourself as someone who truly understands what matters to them. Chapter 4. Confidence. Projection. How to command respect through voice, words, and presence. Confidence is the invisible force that determines whether people listen to your words or dismiss them, whether they see you as a leader or a follower, whether they trust your judgment or question your competence. But confidence isn't something you either have or don't have. It's a set of specific behaviors that can be learned, practiced, and deployed strategically to create the exact impression you want. Real confidence isn't about feeling fearless or having no doubts. It's about projecting competence and certainty, even when you're internally uncertain. Elite communicators understand that confidence is performed, not felt. They've mastered the external behaviors that trigger confidence responses in others, regardless of their internal state. The foundation of confidence projection starts with your voice. Your vocal patterns communicate more about your status and competence than your actual words. Most people undermine themselves with vocal habits they don't even notice. They speak too quickly when nervous, end statements with questioning intonation, or use filler words that signal uncertainty. Master vocal confidence through deliberate voice control. Lower your pitch slightly, especially at the end of statements. This creates what psychologists call authoritative intonation, which signals certainty and competence. Slow your speaking pace by 15%, which forces listeners to pay closer attention and suggests that your words are valuable enough to savor. Eliminate filler words like like, and you know, by practicing strategic pauses instead. When you need time to think, pause silently, rather than filling the space with uncertainty signals. The second element is precise word choice that demonstrates competence. Confident communicators use specific language rather than vague generalizations. They quantify their statements with numbers and data. They use active rather than passive voice. They make declarative statements rather than tentative suggestions. Transform your language patterns by replacing weak phrases with strong alternatives. Instead of, "I think maybe we should consider," say, "The most effective approach is," instead of, "I'm not sure," but say, "Based on the evidence," instead of, "Does that make sense?" Say, "Let me know your thoughts," instead of, "I'll try to." Say, "I will." These linguistic shifts signal competence and certainty to listeners' subconscious minds. The third component is strategic body language that projects authority. Your physical presence communicates before you speak a word. Most people adopt defensive or submissive postures without realizing how they're undermining their credibility. They cross their arms, avoid eye contact, fidget, or take up minimal space. Command physical presence through intentional positioning. Take up appropriate space without being aggressive. Keep your shoulders back and chest open. Maintain steady eye contact, looking away occasionally to avoid staring. Use purposeful gestures that support your words, rather than nervous fidgeting. When standing, keep both feet firmly planted, rather than shifting weight. When sitting, claim your space without encroaching on others. The fourth skill is strategic vulnerability. Counterintuitively, projecting complete invulnerability actually reduces credibility because it seems inauthentic. True confidence includes the ability to admit limitations, acknowledge mistakes, and express uncertainty when appropriate. But this vulnerability must be strategic, not accidental. Master strategic vulnerability by owning your limitations before others discover them. If you're presenting in an area outside your expertise, acknowledge that upfront but emphasize what you do know. If you make a mistake, address it quickly and matter-of-factly, without over-apologizing. If you don't know something, say so confidently. I don't have that information, but I'll find out. This approach actually builds credibility rather than destroying it, because it demonstrates self-awareness and intellectual honesty. The fifth element is preparation that creates authentic confidence. Real confidence comes from competence, and competence comes from thorough preparation. You can't fake confidence in situations where you're genuinely unprepared. Elite communicators prepare so thoroughly that their confidence is authentic rather than performed. Build authentic confidence through systematic preparation. For important conversations, prepare not just your main points but anticipated objections and your responses. Practice key phrases until they feel natural. Research your audience so you can speak to their specific interests and concerns. The more thoroughly prepared you are, the more genuine confidence you'll project, because you'll actually be confident. The sixth technique is managing and channeling nervous energy. Everyone experiences anxiety before important communications. But confident communicators transform that energy into dynamic presence rather than letting it undermine their performance. They understand that nervous energy and excited energy feel similar physiologically and can be reframed. Channel nervous energy by reinterpreting it as excitement and preparation. Before important conversations, use physical movement to release excess energy. Do power poses privately to trigger confidence hormones. Practice deep breathing to center yourself. Remind yourself that nervousness signals that this matters to you, which is positive, not negative. The final mastery level is contextual confidence adaptation. Different situations require different types of confidence expressions. The confidence appropriate for a boardroom presentation differs from the confidence needed for a casual conversation. Elite communicators adjust their confidence projection to match the context while maintaining their core presence. Adapt confidence contextually by reading the situation's requirements. In formal settings, project competence through preparation and expertise. In creative environments, show confidence through willingness to explore ideas. In relationship-building contexts, demonstrate confidence through genuine interest in others. In high-stakes negotiations, project confidence through calm persistence and strategic thinking. True confidence projection isn't about dominating others or appearing perfect. It's about creating an authentic impression of competence, reliability, and thoughtful leadership that makes others naturally want to listen, follow, and trust your judgment. Chapter 5. The High-Stakes Communication System. Thriving under pressure when it matters most. The difference between good communicators and great ones isn't visible in casual conversations. It emerges under pressure. When stakes are high, when emotions are elevated, and when there's no room for mistakes. These are the moments that define careers, relationships, and outcomes. While most people crumble under communication pressure, elite performers have systematic approaches that allow them to thrive when it matters most. High-stakes communication is fundamentally different from normal conversation. The psychology changes when consequences are significant. People become more defensive, more emotional, and more likely to misinterpret intentions. Information becomes politically charged. Every word carries weight. The normal rules of polite conversation become inadequate for the intensity of the moment. The first principle of high-stakes communication is emotional regulation under fire. When pressure increases, most people either become overly aggressive or overly passive. They let emotions hijack their strategic thinking, leading to decisions they later regret. Elite communicators maintain what I call emotional neutrality, a state where they can feel the pressure without being controlled by it. Develop emotional regulation through the pressure inoculation technique. Before high-stakes situations, mentally rehearse the most challenging scenarios you might face. Visualize yourself remaining calm when others become heated. Practice your responses to the worst-case scenarios. When you've already mentally experienced the pressure, the actual situation feels more manageable. Your nervous system has been trained to handle intensity without panic. The second principle is strategic message construction under time pressure. In high-stakes situations, you rarely have time to craft perfect responses. You need frameworks that allow you to construct compelling arguments quickly while avoiding the common traps of saying too much, revealing weaknesses, or making commitments you can't keep. Master rapid message construction through the position, reason, example, benefit framework. First, state your position clearly and briefly. Second, provide one strong reason why this position is correct. Third, give a specific example that illustrates your point. Fourth, explain the benefit or consequence of following your recommendation. This structure ensures your responses are logical, memorable, and persuasive, even under extreme time pressure. The third skill is reading and managing group dynamics in charged environments. High-stakes communication usually involves multiple stakeholders with different agendas, power levels, and emotional states. The ability to quickly assess these dynamics and adjust your approach accordingly is crucial for achieving your objectives without creating unnecessary enemies. Analyze group dynamics by identifying the key players before you speak. Who has the real decision-making authority? Who are the influencers that others look to? Who are potential allies? Who might be threatened by your position? Tailor your message to address the primary decision-maker while acknowledging the concerns of key influencers. This approach builds coalitions rather than resistance. The fourth technique is strategic information management. In high-pressure situations, information becomes a weapon. Revealing too much can undermine your position, while revealing too little can damage credibility. Elite communicators have systematic approaches for deciding what to share, how much detail to provide, and when to hold back critical information for maximum impact. Manage information strategically by using the graduated disclosure method. Start with your strongest, most defensible points. Gauge the response before revealing more sensitive information. Always keep your best evidence in reserve for when you face strong challenges. If others are withholding information, ask direct questions that put pressure on them to be transparent while maintaining your own strategic privacy. The fifth principle is handling hostile or aggressive communication without losing your composure or your position. In high-stakes situations, others may try to intimidate, interrupt, or overwhelm you with aggressive tactics. Most people either fight back aggressively, creating escalation, or submit passively, losing credibility. Counter-aggressive communication through the acknowledge, redirect, refocus technique. First, acknowledge their concern without accepting blame. I understand you're frustrated with this situation. Second, redirect attention from emotion to facts. Let's look at the specific data. Third, refocus on mutual objectives. We both want to solve this problem effectively. This approach diffuses aggression without appearing weak or defensive. The sixth skill is making and extracting commitments in high-pressure environments. High-stakes communication often revolves around getting people to commit to specific actions or decisions. But pressure situations make people reluctant to commit and more likely to hedge or delay. Elite communicators know how to create commitment pressure without appearing pushy or manipulative. Extract commitments through the assumption-close technique. Instead of asking if they'll do something, assume they will, and discuss implementation details. When you implement this next week, what support will you need? This approach makes non-commitment feel awkward, while giving them easy ways to agree. Follow up immediately by confirming specific timelines and next steps in writing. The seventh technique is damage control when things go wrong. In high-stakes situations, mistakes have amplified consequences. How you handle errors, omissions, or misunderstandings often matters more than avoiding them entirely. Elite communicators have protocols for quickly acknowledging problems, taking appropriate responsibility, and redirecting focus to solutions. Handle mistakes through immediate ownership and solution focus. Acknowledge the error quickly and specifically. I provided incorrect information about the timeline. Take appropriate responsibility without over-apologizing. That was my mistake. Immediately pivot to solutions. Here's how we can address this. This approach builds credibility rather than destroying it, because it demonstrates competence in handling problems. The final mastery level is strategic follow-up that locks in your victories. High-stakes communication doesn't end when the meeting ends. The real work often happens in the follow-up, where agreements are solidified, objections are addressed privately, and relationships are built with key decision-makers. Master strategic follow-up by contacting key stakeholders individually within 24 hours. Clarify any uncertainties that arose during the high-pressure situation. Address concerns that people may have been reluctant to raise publicly. Reinforce the key points that support your position with additional evidence or examples. This individual attention often converts fence-sitters into allies and prevents post-meeting second-guessing. High-stakes communication mastery isn't about being perfect under pressure. It's about having systematic approaches that allow you to maintain effectiveness when others lose theirs. turning pressure situations into opportunities to demonstrate leadership and competence that sets you apart from everyone else who wilts when it matters most. Chapter 6. The Negotiation Mastery System. Getting everything you want without creating enemies. Most people think negotiation is about fighting for what they want, but elite negotiators know the secret. The best negotiations feel like collaborations where everyone wins, even when you're getting exactly what you planned. True negotiation mastery isn't about overpowering others. It's about architecting outcomes where your victory looks like their victory too. The foundation of elite negotiation is reframing the entire interaction before it begins. While others see negotiation as a battle over limited resources, masters create abundance by expanding the pie before dividing it. They understand that people's stated positions are rarely their real interests, and that satisfying underlying interests often costs you nothing while creating massive value for them. The first principle is information asymmetry creation. Before any negotiation begins, you must know more about their situation than they know about yours. This isn't about deception. It's about strategic intelligence gathering that reveals their true constraints, motivations, and alternatives. The person with better information always has the advantage. Gather intelligence through strategic pre-negotiation conversations that don't feel like intelligence gathering. Ask about their broader business challenges, their timelines, their internal approval processes, and their success criteria. Listen for what they're really trying to accomplish beyond the specific deal. Map their organizational pressures, their personal motivations, and their measurement criteria. This intelligence becomes your strategic ammunition. The second technique is anchoring with precision. The first number mentioned in any negotiation creates a psychological anchor that influences all subsequent discussions. Most people either anchor too aggressively, creating resistance, or too weakly, leaving value on the table. Elite negotiators use calculated anchoring that stretches their counterparts' expectations while remaining within the realm of possibility. Master anchoring by starting with your research-based extreme position, then immediately providing logical justification for why that position is reasonable. Don't just throw out a number. Build a case for why that number makes sense given market conditions, precedent, or value creation. This approach moves their anchor point while maintaining credibility and avoiding the impression that you're trying to take advantage of them. The third skill is tactical concession making. That creates reciprocity pressure. Every concession you make should feel valuable to them, while costing you as little as possible. Elite negotiators prepare lists of low-cost, high perceived value concessions they can make strategically throughout the negotiation to build goodwill and create reciprocity debt. Structure concessions using the reluctant concession method. Never give anything away easily, even if it costs you nothing. Express hesitation. Explain why you normally wouldn't agree to this. Then, make the concession contingent on something you want. I normally wouldn't include expedited delivery, but given your tight timeline, I can make that work if we can finalize the agreement by Friday. This approach makes every concession feel earned rather than expected. The fourth principle is creating multiple variables to expand trading opportunities. Simple negotiations with only one variable inevitably become win-lose scenarios. Elite negotiators introduce multiple dimensions that allow for creative value exchanges where both parties can win on the variables that matter most to them. Expand negotiation variables by exploring timing, payment terms, scope modifications, service levels, guarantees, exclusivity arrangements, referral commitments, or future considerations. Often, what's expensive for you to provide is inexpensive for them to receive, and vice versa. Find these asymmetries and build trades around them that create mutual value. The fifth technique is strategic deadline management. Time pressure is one of the most powerful forces in negotiation, but most people use it crudely by creating artificial urgency. Elite negotiators understand real deadlines and use them strategically while being prepared to walk away when necessary. Manage deadlines by understanding both sides' real-time constraints, not their stated ones. What happens if this deal doesn't close by their deadline? What are the real consequences? Often, deadlines that seem immovable are actually flexible when you understand the underlying drivers. Use this knowledge to avoid being pressured into bad agreements while applying appropriate pressure when you have timeline advantages. The sixth skill is objection handling that strengthens your position. When someone raises an objection, most people either argue against it directly or give ground immediately. Elite negotiators use objections as opportunities to demonstrate value and build stronger cases for their position. Transform objections using the validate, isolate, reframe technique. First, validate their concern. To show you understand, that's a legitimate consideration. Second, isolate the objection to ensure you're addressing their real concern. If I can address the timeline issue, are there other concerns we need to discuss? Third, reframe the objection in the context of your overall value proposition. The timeline is tight because we prioritize quality, which is exactly why our clients choose us over faster competitors. The seventh principle is strategic use of alternatives and leverage. Your negotiating power comes from your alternatives, not from your arguments. The person who needs the deal least has the most power. Elite negotiators develop strong alternatives before they negotiate and communicate their alternatives subtly throughout the process. Build leverage by always having a plan B that you're genuinely willing to execute. This isn't about bluffing, it's about creating real options that reduce your dependence on any single negotiation. When you truly don't need to make a deal, you negotiate from a position of strength that others can sense, even if you never explicitly mention your alternatives. The final mastery level is emotional intelligence throughout high-pressure negotiations. Elite negotiators read and manage emotions, both their own and their counterparts, to keep negotiations productive even when tensions rise. They recognize when emotions are genuine versus strategic, when to acknowledge emotions versus ignore them, and when to take breaks versus push through. Master negotiation, emotional intelligence, by staying calm when others become heated, acknowledging emotions without being controlled by them, and using emotional peaks strategically. When someone becomes angry or frustrated, often the best response is to remain calm and say, "I can see this is important to you. Help me understand what's driving this concern." This approach diffuses emotion while gathering intelligence about their real priorities. Elite negotiation isn't about winning at others' expense. It's about creating outcomes that serve your interests, while giving others legitimate reasons to feel good about the agreement. This approach builds long-term relationships while achieving your objectives, turning one-time negotiations into ongoing partnerships that create value for years. Chapter 7. Advanced People Reading. Decoding. Hidden Intentions. and unspoken motivations. While most people take others at face value, elite communicators are constantly reading beneath the surface, gathering intelligence about true motivations, hidden agendas, and unspoken concerns. This isn't mind reading, it's systematic observation and analysis of the subtle signals people constantly broadcast about their real thoughts and feelings. The foundation of advanced people reading is understanding that humans are terrible at hiding their internal states. We leak information constantly through micro-expressions, body language, vocal patterns, word choices, and behavioral inconsistencies. The key is training yourself to notice and interpret these signals accurately while avoiding the common pitfall of overanalyzing or projecting your own biases. The first level is baseline establishment. Before you can read someone's deviations, you need to understand their normal patterns. Everyone has unique communication styles, emotional expressions, and behavioral tendencies. Elite readers spend the first few minutes of any interaction cataloging someone's baseline behaviors so they can spot changes that indicate stress, deception, or emotional shifts. Establish baselines by observing their normal pace of speech, typical gestures, usual eye contact patterns, standard posture, and comfortable conversation topics. Notice how they behave when discussing neutral subjects before moving to more sensitive areas. Once you know they're normal, any deviation becomes potentially significant information about their internal state. The second skill is micro-expression recognition. Facial expressions leak genuine emotions for split seconds before people gain conscious control and display their intended expression. These micro-expressions reveal true feelings even when someone is trying to hide them. The 7 universal micro-expressions are happiness, sadness, anger, fear, surprise, disgust, and contempt. Train micro-expression recognition by practicing with online databases and paying attention to the brief moment when someone's face first reacts before they compose themselves. Look for incongruence between someone's words and their immediate facial reaction. If someone says, "That sounds great," but flashes a micro-expression of concern, you're seeing their real response before their social filter kicks in. The third technique is vocal pattern analysis. The voice carries enormous amounts of emotional and psychological information that most people miss because they focus only on words. Changes in pitch, pace, volume, and vocal quality reveal stress, excitement, deception, or uncertainty. Even when the words remain controlled, read vocal patterns by listening for pace changes that indicate comfort or discomfort with topics. Pitch increases that often signal stress or deception. Volume changes that reveal confidence levels, and vocal quality shifts like breathiness or tension that indicate emotional states. Someone might say, "I'm completely confident about this," while their voice becomes higher and faster, revealing their actual uncertainty. The fourth level is body language cluster analysis. Individual gestures can be misleading, but patterns of body language create reliable pictures of internal states. Elite readers look for clusters of behaviors that reinforce each other, rather than interpreting single gestures in isolation. Analyze body language clusters by looking for multiple simultaneous signals that point in the same direction. Defensiveness might show up as crossed arms, plus lean-back posture, plus reduced eye contact, plus closed lip expressions. Genuine interest might appear as forward lean, plus open gestures, plus increased eye contact, plus animated expressions. The more signals that align, the more confident you can be in your interpretation. The fifth skill is linguistic analysis that reveals thought patterns and priorities. People's word choices, sentence structures, and speech patterns reveal how they think, what they prioritize, and what they're trying to avoid discussing. Elite readers listen not just to what's said, but how it's structured and what's omitted. Analyze language patterns by noticing their preferred sensory language. Do they use visual terms like, "I see what you mean," or auditory terms like, "that sounds right," or kinesthetic terms like, "I feel like"? This reveals their processing style and gives you clues about how to communicate most effectively with them. Listen for absolute versus qualified language, which indicates confidence levels and potential flexibility. The sixth technique is detecting deception and manipulation attempts. People rarely lie outright, but they often omit information, exaggerate certain aspects, or use language strategically to create false impressions. Elite readers recognize the subtle signs of information management and can adjust their strategies accordingly. Spot deception signals by watching for increased self-touching, changes in eye contact patterns, defensive body positioning, increased use of qualifying language like "to be honest" or "frankly," and stories that lack specific details or include irrelevant information designed to distract. Remember that these are indicators, not proof, and should prompt further investigation rather than immediate conclusions. The seventh skill is reading group dynamics and power structures. In group settings, understanding who has real influence, who defers to whom, and what alliances exist gives you strategic advantages in positioning your message and building support for your ideas. Map group dynamics by observing who speaks first, who others look to before responding, whose ideas get built upon versus ignored, who interrupts whom without consequences, and how physical positioning reflects power relationships. In meetings, watch who people check with through eye contact before committing to positions. These patterns reveal the real decision-making structure, regardless of formal titles. The eighth technique is motivation archaeology through strategic questioning. Beyond reading external signals, elite communicators are skilled at asking questions that reveal underlying motivations, fears, and desires that others might not even be fully conscious of themselves. Extract motivations by asking about ideal outcomes, worst fears, past experiences that shaped their thinking, and the consequences they're trying to avoid. Instead of asking, "What do you want?" which gets surface responses, ask, "What would success look like in this situation?" Or, "What keeps you up at night about this issue?" These questions reveal deeper drivers that become keys to influence. The final mastery level is reading across cultural and individual differences. People from different backgrounds, cultures, and personality types express themselves differently. What looks like deception in one culture might be politeness in another. What seems like disinterest in one personality type might be deep consideration in another. Develop cultural intelligence by learning the baseline behaviors of different groups and individuals rather than applying universal interpretations. Introverts might avoid eye contact when thinking deeply, not when being deceptive. People from high-context cultures might communicate indirectly as a sign of respect, not evasion. Adjust your reading accordingly, while looking for deviations from their cultural and personal baselines. Advanced people reading transforms every interaction into an intelligence-gathering opportunity. You'll know when someone is genuinely interested versus being polite, when they have concerns they're not expressing, when they have authority to make decisions versus needing approval from others, and when they're telling the complete truth versus managing information strategically. Chapter 8. Conflict Resolution Mastery. Turning opposition into opportunity. Most people see conflict as something to avoid or endure, but elite communicators understand that conflict is actually information. It reveals underlying tensions, unmet needs, and misaligned expectations that were previously hidden. Masters don't just resolve conflicts. They transform them into opportunities for stronger relationships and better outcomes than existed before the conflict arose. The fundamental reframe is understanding that conflict is rarely about the surface issue being debated. People don't fight about money. They fight about fairness, respect, or security. They don't fight about deadlines. They fight about competence recognition or resource allocation. Elite conflict resolvers always address the underlying emotional and psychological drivers, not just the superficial disagreement. The first principle is immediate emotional regulation under fire. When conflict emerges, most people either become defensive and aggressive or withdraw and avoid. Both responses escalate tension and prevent resolution. Elite communicators maintain what I call conflict composure, staying calm and strategic, even when others become emotional. Develop conflict composure through the physiological reset technique. When you feel your emotional temperature rising, immediately slow your breathing, lower your voice, and pause before responding. This activates your parasympathetic nervous system and prevents the fight or flight response from hijacking your strategic thinking. Your calm presence becomes an anchor that can actually de-escalate others. The second skill is reframing conflict as mutual problem solving. Instead of viewing conflict as a battle between opposing forces, elite resolvers position it as a shared challenge that requires collaborative solutions. This single reframe changes the entire dynamic from adversarial to cooperative. Reframe conflict by using collaborative language patterns. Instead of, "You're wrong about this," say, "We have different perspectives on this issue." Instead of, "That won't work," say, "Let's explore the challenges with that approach." Instead of, "This is your fault," say, "We're facing a situation that needs attention." This language creates psychological safety for both parties to explore solutions without losing face. The third technique is tactical empathy that disarms defensiveness. This isn't about agreeing with the other person or abandoning your position. It's about demonstrating that you understand their perspective and concerns, which makes them more willing to consider yours. Most conflict escalates because people feel unheard and misunderstood. Deploy tactical empathy by explicitly acknowledging their concerns before presenting your perspective. "I understand you're frustrated because you feel the timeline is unrealistic given your current workload. That's a legitimate concern." This validation doesn't require agreement, but it demonstrates that you're listening and taking their perspective seriously, which reduces defensiveness. The fourth principle is separating people from positions. In heated conflicts, People become emotionally attached to their stated positions and fight to defend them, even when better alternatives emerge. Elite resolvers help people step back from their positions to explore the underlying interests that those positions were meant to serve. Separate people from positions by asking about underlying needs and concerns. Help me understand what you're trying to accomplish with that approach. Or, what would need to happen for you to feel comfortable with a different solution? These questions move the conversation from defending positions to exploring interests, which opens space for creative alternatives. The fifth skill is managing power dynamics during conflicts. Conflicts often involve unequal power relationships that complicate resolution. Elite communicators know how to navigate these dynamics without either abusing power advantages or being victimized by power disadvantages. Navigate power dynamics by addressing them directly when appropriate. If you have more formal power, explicitly level the playing field. I want to hear your honest perspective on this, even if you disagree with me. If you have less formal power, focus on shared interests and mutual benefits rather than trying to win through argument. Power struggles rarely produce good outcomes for anyone. The sixth technique is strategic concession trading that creates win-win outcomes. In most conflicts, there are multiple issues at stake, and different issues have different importance levels for each party. Elite resolvers identify these asymmetries and construct trades where each party gets what matters most to them. Structure concession trades by first mapping what's most and least important to each side. Often, what's expensive for you to give is inexpensive for them to receive, and vice versa. Build packages where you concede on their high-importance, low-cost items in exchange for getting your high-importance items. This approach creates mutual satisfaction rather than mutual compromise. The seventh principle is timing management during heated exchanges. Conflicts often escalate because people try to resolve everything immediately while emotions are running high. Elite resolvers know when to engage, when to de-escalate, and when to take strategic breaks that allow emotions to cool and perspectives to shift. Manage conflict timing by recognizing when emotions are too high for productive discussion. If someone is extremely angry or upset, immediate resolution attempts often backfire. Instead, acknowledge the importance of the issue and suggest a specific time to continue the discussion when both parties can approach it more strategically. This is clearly important to both of us. Let's schedule time tomorrow morning to work through this properly. The eighth skill is building stronger relationships through conflict resolution. Elite communicators don't just resolve the immediate disagreement. They use the conflict as an opportunity to establish better communication patterns, clearer expectations, and stronger working relationships going forward. Strengthen relationships through conflict by explicitly discussing what you've learned about each other's communication styles, priorities, and concerns. This conversation helped me understand that advance notice on schedule changes is really important to you. I'll make sure to give you more lead time going forward. This approach transforms conflict from relationship damage into relationship improvement. The final mastery level is preventing future conflicts through systematic communication improvement. Rather than just fixing the current problem, elite communicators establish ongoing practices that reduce the likelihood of similar conflicts arising again. Prevent future conflicts by creating better communication systems. This might include regular check-ins to surface issues before they become conflicts, clearer decision-making processes so everyone understands their role, or explicit agreements about how to handle disagreements when they arise. The goal is to build a culture where conflicts are addressed quickly and constructively, rather than being avoided until they explode. Conflict resolution mastery isn't about winning arguments or getting your way. It's about transforming opposition into opportunities for better understanding, stronger relationships, and more effective collaboration. When you master these skills, people will seek you out to help resolve difficult situations because they know you can find solutions that work for everyone. Chapter 9. Authority Building. How to become the person others naturally follow. Real authority has nothing to do with titles or formal power. It's the invisible force that makes people naturally defer to your judgment, seek your opinion, and follow your lead, even when you have no formal authority over them. True authority is earned through demonstrated competence, strategic positioning, and consistent value delivery that makes others believe you have insights they need. The foundation of authority building is understanding that authority is perception, and perception is manageable. People grant authority to those they believe have superior knowledge, judgment, or capability in areas that matter to them. Your job is to systematically build and communicate competence in ways that create this perception without appearing arrogant or self-promotional. The first principle is expertise demonstration through strategic knowledge display. Simply being competent isn't enough if others don't recognize your competence. Elite authority builders have systematic approaches for showcasing their expertise in ways that feel natural and helpful rather than boastful. Demonstrate expertise by becoming the go-to source for valuable information in your area. Share insights that others find useful. Provide analysis that helps people understand complex situations. Offer perspectives that reveal patterns others miss. Do this consistently across multiple channels and contexts, so people begin to associate you with valuable thinking in your domain. The second technique is strategic opinion leadership through thought contribution. Authority figures don't just respond to conversations, they shape them. They introduce new frameworks, challenge conventional wisdom, and articulate positions that influence how others think about important issues. Build thought leadership by taking clear positions on important issues in your field and articulating the reasoning behind those positions. Write articles, speak at events, participate in important conversations, and offer frameworks that help others organize their thinking. When people start referencing your ideas or using your frameworks, you're building intellectual authority. The third skill is competence amplification through selective challenge acceptance. Authority is built by successfully handling difficult situations that others can't or won't tackle. Elite authority builders strategically take on challenging projects or problems that allow them to demonstrate superior capability. Amplify competence by volunteering for high-visibility challenges where success will be noticed and attributed to your capabilities. Look for problems that others have struggled with or avoided. When you succeed where others have failed, your competence becomes visible and undeniable. Choose these opportunities strategically based on your genuine strengths and preparation. The fourth principle is social proof accumulation through strategic relationship building. Authority is partially borrowed from associations with other respected figures. People grant more authority to those who are recognized by others they already respect. Build social proof by cultivating relationships with respected figures in your field and finding ways to collaborate or be associated with their work. Seek introductions, participate in their events, contribute to their projects, or invite them to contribute to yours. When respected people publicly endorse your work or associate with you professionally, their authority transfers partially to you. The fifth technique is consistency building through reliable value delivery. Authority requires trust, and trust comes from consistent performance over time. People grant authority to those they can depend on to deliver valuable insights, sound judgment, or effective solutions repeatedly. Build consistency by establishing regular opportunities to demonstrate value and following through reliably. This might be weekly insights, monthly analyses, quarterly presentations, or annual strategies. The key is creating expectations and meeting them consistently so people come to depend on your contributions and see you as a reliable source of value. The sixth skill is strategic positioning through selective accessibility. Authority figures are available when it matters, but aren't constantly accessible for trivial issues. They position themselves as valuable resources whose time and attention are worth seeking. Position yourself strategically by being generous with valuable insights while being selective about your time. Respond quickly and thoughtfully to important requests, while politely deferring less critical demands. This approach creates scarcity around your attention while demonstrating that you prioritize impact over ego, which actually enhances your authority. The seventh principle is influence expansion through systematic network building. Authority grows through networks of people who recognize and amplify your expertise. Elite authority builders are strategic about cultivating relationships that extend their influence beyond their immediate circle. Expand influence by building relationships across multiple levels and functions within your industry or organization. Cultivate relationships with peers who can refer opportunities to you, junior people who can become advocates as they advance, and senior people who can provide sponsorship and visibility. This multi-level approach ensures your authority recognition spreads systematically. The eighth technique is legacy creation through knowledge transfer. True authority builders don't just accumulate influence for themselves. They create lasting impact by developing others and building systems that outlast their direct involvement. Create legacy by actively developing others and sharing your frameworks, insights, and approaches in ways that create lasting value. Mentor rising talent. Document your methodologies, create training programs, or build systems that embed your approaches into ongoing operations. When your influence continues even in your absence, you've built lasting authority. The final mastery level is humble authority that attracts rather than repels. The most powerful authority figures are those who wear their expertise lightly, acknowledge their limitations, and use their influence to elevate others rather than just themselves. Practice humble authority by being confident about your expertise while remaining curious about areas outside your knowledge. Giving credit generously to others who contribute to your success, acknowledging mistakes quickly and learning from them publicly, and using your platform to highlight others' good work rather than just your own. This approach attracts loyalty and builds sustainable influence. Authority building is a long-term process that requires consistency, strategic thinking, and genuine value creation. When done correctly, it creates a virtuous cycle where your growing influence provides more opportunities to demonstrate competence, which builds more influence, which creates more opportunities. The key is focusing on genuine value creation rather than self-promotion, because authority that's based on real competence is the only kind that lasts. Chapter 10. Verbal precision. The language patterns that control outcomes. Words are not just communication tools. They are programming languages for human consciousness. The specific words you choose, the patterns you use, and the structures you employ literally shape how others think about situations, themselves, and their options. Elite communicators understand that verbal precision is the difference between suggesting ideas and implanting them. Most people use language carelessly, saying roughly what they mean and hoping others understand their intention. But elite communicators treat every word as a strategic choice that either advances their objectives or undermines them. They understand that small changes in language create massive changes in psychological impact. The first principle is presupposition mastery that bypasses resistance. Instead of directly stating what you want someone to believe or do, you embed those assumptions into the structure of your sentences so they're accepted unconsciously before the person can evaluate them consciously. Master presuppositions by structuring sentences that assume the outcomes you want. Instead of, if you decide to move forward with this project, say, when you move forward with this project. Instead of, do you think this approach could work? Say, how do you think this approach will work best? These subtle shifts program assumptions into the listener's mind without triggering resistance. The second technique is temporal language patterns that create urgency and momentum. How you reference time influences how people feel about decisions and actions. Elite communicators use time-based language to create appropriate urgency without pressure, momentum without panic. Use temporal patterns strategically by connecting positive outcomes to immediate action and negative consequences to delay. The sooner we implement this, the faster you'll see results. Creates momentum toward action. Every day we delay gives our competitors more advantage, creates urgency without being manipulative. These patterns help people feel the natural time pressure of their situations. The third skill is certainty versus possibility language that calibrates confidence levels. Different situations require different certainty levels in your language. Sometimes you need to project confidence and conviction. Other times you need to acknowledge uncertainty while maintaining credibility. Calibrate certainty language by matching your confidence level to your actual knowledge and the situation's requirements. Use definitive language like, "This will result in," when you have strong evidence and need to project confidence. Use possibility language like, "This is likely to result in," when you're less certain but still want to make the case. Match your language to your knowledge to maintain credibility. The fourth principle is emotional language selection that creates desired feelings. Every word carries emotional weight that influences how people feel about ideas, situations, and options. Elite communicators choose words specifically for their emotional impact, not just their literal meaning. Select emotional language by considering the feelings you want to create, then choosing words that generate those emotions. Instead of cost reduction, say efficiency improvement. Instead of problem, say opportunity for improvement. Instead of failure, say learning experience. These shifts don't change facts, but they change how people feel about facts, which influences their decisions. The fifth technique is specificity versus generality calibration. Specific language creates credibility and clarity, while general language creates flexibility and agreement. Elite communicators move fluidly between specific and general language based on their strategic objectives in each moment. Calibrate specificity by being specific when you want to build credibility and general when you want to build agreement. Our approach increased efficiency by 23% in the first quarter, is specific and credible. This approach significantly improves performance, is general and harder to argue with. Use specificity to prove points and generality to build consensus. The sixth skill is question patterns that guide thinking in desired directions. Questions are incredibly powerful because they force mental processing in specific directions. Elite communicators ask questions not just to gather information but to direct others' thinking toward conclusions that support their objectives. Master question patterns by asking questions that lead people to convince themselves. Instead of telling someone they should prioritize this project, ask, given your goals for this quarter, what would be the impact of completing this project versus delaying it? This approach makes them think through your logic and reach your conclusion independently. The seventh principle is contrast frames that highlight advantages. How you position options influences which ones seem attractive. Elite communicators create linguistic frames that make their preferred options appear obviously superior without disparaging alternatives. Create contrast frames by juxtaposing your preferred option with less attractive alternatives in ways that highlight your option's advantages. We could continue with the current approach and accept the ongoing inefficiencies, or we could implement this new system and solve the problem permanently. This framing makes one choice seem obviously superior without appearing manipulative. The eighth technique is ownership language that creates psychological investment. When people use language that implies ownership or personal involvement with ideas, they become psychologically committed to those ideas. Elite communicators guide others to use ownership language about their proposals. Encourage ownership language by asking questions that require people to envision themselves implementing or benefiting from your ideas. How would you roll this out to your team? Makes them think about implementation as if they've already decided to proceed. What results would you expect to see? Makes them envision the benefits personally. The ninth skill is authority language that establishes credibility without arrogance. How you reference your expertise, experience, or knowledge influences whether others see you as credible or arrogant. Elite communicators demonstrate authority through subtle language patterns rather than explicit claims. Use authority language subtly by referencing your experience indirectly through specific examples and insights rather than general claims about your expertise. Instead of, "I'm an expert in this area," say, "In my experience working with similar companies, the most effective approach has been." This demonstrates authority through specificity rather than self-promotion. The final mastery level is adaptive language matching that builds unconscious rapport. People are more influenced by those who speak in patterns similar to their own. Elite communicators adapt their language patterns to match their audience while maintaining their core message. Match language patterns by observing and adapting to others' communication styles. If they speak in big concepts, respond conceptually. If they use specific data, provide specifics. If they're relationship-focused, use collaborative language. If they're results-oriented, use outcome language. This adaptation creates unconscious comfort that makes your message more persuasive. Verbal precision isn't about manipulation or trickery. It's about choosing language that accurately represents your ideas while presenting them in ways that create the best possible outcomes for everyone involved. When you master these patterns, your words become tools of transformation that help others see possibilities, make better decisions, and take actions that serve everyone's interests. Chapter 11. Persuasion Mastery. The Psychology of Inevitable Agreement. Most people think persuasion is about having the best arguments or being the most convincing speaker, but elite persuaders understand that true persuasion happens before you even start talking. It's about creating psychological conditions where your ideas feel like natural conclusions rather than external suggestions. Real persuasion mastery means people convince themselves. The foundation of elite persuasion is understanding that humans make decisions emotionally and then justify them logically. While most people lead with facts and hope for emotional buy-in, masters do the opposite. They create emotional resonance first, then provide logical frameworks that allow people to feel smart about decisions they already want to make. The first principle is desire architecture that makes your proposal feel inevitable. Instead of trying to convince people to want something different, elite persuaders identify what people already want and position their ideas as the obvious path to getting it. They become bridges between current desires and better outcomes. Master desire architecture by starting every persuasion attempt with deep investigation into what the other person really wants to achieve, avoid, or experience. Don't ask them directly what they want, because most people don't consciously know their real motivations. Instead, ask about their ideal outcomes, their biggest frustrations, and their previous experiences. Listen for the emotional drivers behind their rational explanations. The second technique is resistance preemption that removes objections before they form. Most people wait for objections and then try to overcome them, which creates adversarial dynamics. Elite persuaders anticipate concerns and address them proactively, making agreement feel like the natural choice. Preempt resistance by acknowledging potential concerns before your audience raises them. You might be thinking this sounds too complicated to implement quickly, and that's a valid concern. Here's how we can make this simple. This approach demonstrates that you understand their perspective and have thought through their concerns, which builds credibility and removes barriers to acceptance. The third skill is social proof orchestration that leverages the power of peer influence. People don't just want evidence that something works, they want evidence that people like them have succeeded with it. Elite persuaders collect and strategically deploy social proof that matches their audience's identity and concerns. Orchestrate social proof by gathering specific stories of people similar to your audience who have achieved the outcomes you're proposing. Don't use generic testimonials. Use detailed case studies that show the decision-making process, implementation challenges, and specific results. The more similar the social proof to your audience's situation, the more powerful it becomes. The fourth principle is commitment escalation that builds psychological investment gradually. Instead of asking for big commitments up front, elite persuaders create sequences of small agreements that naturally lead to larger decisions. Each yes makes the next yes easier and more psychologically consistent. Structure commitment escalation by starting with easy agreements about problems or desired outcomes, then gradually moving towards solution agreement and implementation commitment. Do you agree that this situation needs to be addressed? Leads to, do you think this approach could solve it? Which leads to, what would need to happen to move forward? Each step feels natural while building momentum toward your objective. The fifth technique is value reframing that shifts perspective on costs and benefits. How people evaluate options depends entirely on the frame of reference you establish. Elite persuaders don't just present benefits, they reframe the entire context to make their proposal appear obviously valuable. Master value. Reframing. By changing the comparison points and time horizons people use to evaluate your proposal. Instead of comparing your solution to doing nothing, compare it to the cost of the status quo over time. Instead of focusing on upfront investment, focus on long-term return. The question isn't whether this costs money. It's whether the cost of not solving this problem is higher than the cost of solving it. The sixth skill is urgency creation through genuine scarcity. Artificial deadline pressure often backfires, but authentic urgency based on real consequences creates appropriate motivation without manipulation. Elite persuaders help people understand the true costs of delay and the real windows for opportunity. Create authentic urgency by revealing the natural time pressures that already exist in their situation. Market windows close, competitive advantages erode, problems compound, and opportunities move to others who act faster. Help them see these realities without creating artificial pressure. While we're discussing this, your competitors are moving forward with their solutions. What's the cost of falling further behind? The seventh principle is objection transformation that turns resistance into reasons to proceed. When someone objects to your proposal, most people see it as a problem to overcome. Elite persuaders see objections as information about what matters most to the person, which becomes the key to crafting irresistible responses. Transform objections by using them as bridges to stronger arguments. If someone says, "This is too expensive," respond with, "Cost is definitely important to consider. What would the return on investment need to be for this to make financial sense?" This approach acknowledges their concern while guiding them towards solution thinking rather than problem thinking. The eighth technique is emotional state management that creates receptivity to your ideas. People in different emotional states process information differently. Elite persuaders recognize emotional states and adapt their approach accordingly, sometimes shifting emotional states to create better conditions for persuasion. Manage emotional states by matching your energy to theirs initially, then gradually guiding them toward more receptive states. If they're anxious, acknowledge the concern and provide reassurance before presenting solutions. If they're excited, harness that energy toward positive outcomes. If they're skeptical, validate their caution and provide evidence. Your emotional intelligence determines your persuasion success. The final mastery level is ethical influence that serves everyone's interests. The most powerful persuaders are those who genuinely believe their proposals will benefit the other person. This authenticity creates congruence between their words and intentions, which people can sense even if they can't articulate it. Practice ethical influence by ensuring your proposals genuinely serve the other person's interests, not just your own. When you truly believe you're helping someone make a better decision, your persuasion becomes more authentic and effective. People can sense the difference between manipulation and genuine recommendation, and they respond accordingly. True persuasion mastery isn't about getting people to do what you want. It's about helping them see opportunities they might have missed and make decisions that genuinely serve their interests. When you master these principles, people don't feel persuaded, they feel enlightened. Chapter 12. Digital Communication Excellence. Mastering virtual and written influence. The digital age has fundamentally changed communication, creating new opportunities and new challenges that most people haven't adapted to. While face-to-face communication relies heavily on vocal tone and body language, digital communication strips away these signals, making your words carry the entire burden of influence. Elite digital communicators have mastered techniques that create impact through screens and text. The foundation of digital communication excellence is understanding that virtual interactions require intentional amplification of signals that would be natural in person. Your energy, clarity, and presence must be consciously projected through technology rather than naturally transmitted through physical proximity. The first principle is virtual presence projection that commands attention through screens. In video calls, most people fade into the background, becoming forgettable participants rather than influential contributors. Elite digital communicators use specific techniques to project authority and engagement that cuts through screen fatigue and technical barriers. Master virtual presence through strategic positioning and energy management. Position your camera at eye level to create psychological equality rather than looking down or up at participants. Use lighting that clearly illuminates your face without creating harsh shadows. Most importantly, project 20% more energy than feels natural, because screens absorb energy and enthusiasm. What feels overly animated in person appears appropriately engaged through video. The second technique is written persuasion architecture that influences without vocal cues. Email, messaging, and document communication require completely different persuasion strategies than spoken communication. You must create engagement, build rapport, and guide decision-making using only words and structure. Structure written persuasion using the attention, interest, desire, action framework adapted for digital formats. Grab attention with specific, relevant subject lines or opening sentences. Build interest through immediate value or intriguing questions. Create desire by painting clear pictures of outcomes and benefits. Drive action with specific, time-bound requests. Every written communication should guide the reader toward a clear next step. The third skill is asynchronous influence that works across time zones and delayed responses. Digital communication often happens with delays between messages, which requires different strategies than real-time conversation. Elite digital communicators craft messages that maintain influence even when responses come hours or days later. Master asynchronous influence by front-loading your key points and making your messages self-contained. Don't assume people remember previous conversations or have immediate context. Include enough background to make your message clear without requiring them to search through previous communications. End with specific questions or requests that guide their response in productive directions. The fourth principle is attention management in distracted environments. Digital communication competes with notifications, multitasking, and shortened attention spans. Elite communicators design their messages and presentations to capture and hold attention despite these challenges. Capture digital attention through strategic formatting and pacing. Use white space to make text easy to scan. Include bullet points and numbered lists for complex information. Bold key phrases that convey your main points, even if they only skim. Keep paragraphs short and focused on single ideas. Structure information so the most important points are visible within the first few seconds of reading. The fifth technique is virtual relationship building that creates connection without physical presence. Building trust and rapport through screens requires intentional strategies that replace the natural bonding that happens through shared physical space and subtle social cues. Build virtual relationships by being more intentional about personal connection and follow-through. Start meetings with brief personal check-ins that go beyond, "How are you?" Remember details from previous conversations and reference them in future interactions. Use private messages to build individual relationships within group settings. Follow through on commitments faster and more thoroughly than expected to build reliability-based trust. The sixth skill is digital meeting facilitation that keeps virtual groups engaged and productive. Leading effective virtual meetings requires different skills than in-person facilitation. You must manage technology, attention, and group dynamics through screens while achieving meaningful outcomes. Facilitate digital meetings using structured engagement techniques. Use polls and chat features to maintain participation. Call on people by name more frequently than you would in person. Create breakout opportunities that allow smaller group interaction. Summarize key points visually using shared screens. End with clear action items and individual accountability to maintain momentum after the meeting ends. The seventh principle is cross-platform communication optimization that adapts to different digital environments. Email requires different approaches than instant messaging, which differs from video conferencing, which differs from collaborative documents. Elite digital communicators adjust their style and strategy based on the platform's constraints and opportunities. Optimize platform communication by matching your approach to the medium's strengths. Use email for detailed information sharing and formal requests. Use instant messaging for quick coordination and relationship maintenance. Use video calls for complex discussions and relationship building. Use collaborative documents for group input and transparent decision-making. Choose the right platform for your communication objective rather than defaulting to familiar options. The eighth technique is digital influence scaling that reaches larger audiences effectively. Digital platforms allow you to influence hundreds or thousands of people simultaneously. But this requires different strategies than one-on-one persuasion. Elite digital communicators create content and messages that feel personal while reaching many people. Scale digital influence by creating personalized mass communication that speaks to individual concerns while addressing group audiences. Use segmentation to tailor messages to specific audience subsets. Create interactive content that engages participants actively rather than passively consuming information. Respond personally to comments and questions to maintain individual connection within group settings. The final mastery level is digital authenticity that builds genuine connection through technology. The biggest challenge in digital communication is maintaining authentic human connection when technology creates barriers to natural interaction. Elite digital communicators overcome these barriers to create real relationships and meaningful influence. Achieve digital authenticity by being more intentional about expressing genuine interest, concern, and appreciation through digital channels. Use voice messages when appropriate to add personal touch to text communication. Share appropriate vulnerability and personal insights that help others connect with you as a person. Focus on serving others' needs rather than advancing your own agenda, which translates authentically across all digital platforms. Digital communication excellence isn't about mastering technology. It's about adapting timeless influence principles to new mediums. When you master these skills, you'll be as influential through screens and text as you are in person, giving you communication power that works in any format. Chapter 13. Presentation Domination. Speaking to groups and commanding audiences. Standing in front of a group changes everything about communication. The dynamics shift from conversation to performance, from dialogue to monologue, from influence to inspiration. Most people become nervous speakers who hope to survive their presentations, but elite presenters transform groups, shape thinking, and command audiences with systematic mastery that makes their messages unforgettable. The foundation of presentation dominance is understanding that audiences don't just want information, they want transformation. They want to leave feeling different than when they arrived. Your job isn't just to share knowledge, it's to create an experience that changes how people think, feel, and act about your topic. The first principle is audience psychology mastery that reads and responds to group dynamics. Individual conversations allow you to adjust in real time based on immediate feedback, but group presentations require you to read collective energy and respond to aggregate reactions. Elite presenters develop sensitivity to group moods and know how to shift energy strategically. Master audience psychology by scanning the room continuously for energy levels, engagement signals, and collective reactions. Look for clusters of nodding heads, patterns of note-taking, shifts in posture, and changes in attention. When energy drops, inject interaction, change pace, or tell a story. When confusion appears, clarify immediately. When resistance emerges, acknowledge it directly and address underlying concerns. The second technique is narrative architecture that creates compelling story flow. Great presentations aren't collections of information. They're journeys that take audiences from problem awareness to solution understanding to action commitment. Elite presenters structure their content as stories with clear beginning, middle, and end that feel inevitable and satisfying. Structure, narrative, architecture, using the problem agitation solution framework enhanced with personal stakes. Start by establishing a problem your audience recognizes. Agitate that problem by exploring its consequences and costs. Present your solution as the logical resolution to the established problem. Throughout, make the stakes personal by showing how this affects each audience member individually, not just their organization or industry. The third skill is vocal command that projects authority and maintains attention. Your voice is your primary tool for controlling audience energy, attention, and emotion. Most people speak in monotone patterns that lull audiences to sleep. But elite presenters use vocal variety strategically to create engagement and emphasize key points. Develop vocal command through intentional pace, pitch, and volume variation. Slow down for important points to let them sink in. Speed up during transitions to maintain momentum. Lower your pitch to convey authority and importance. Raise your pitch to express excitement or urgency. Vary your volume to create intimate moments and powerful crescendos. Use strategic pauses to create emphasis and allow processing time. The fourth principle is physical presence that fills the space and commands attention. Your body language communicates before you speak a word and continues to reinforce or undermine your message throughout your presentation. Elite presenters use movement, gestures, and positioning strategically to enhance their influence and maintain engagement. Command physical presence by claiming appropriate space without appearing aggressive. Move with purpose rather than nervous pacing. Use gestures that support your words rather than distract from them. Make eye contact with individuals throughout the audience to create personal connection. Stand tall and open to project confidence and accessibility. Your physical presence should reinforce your verbal message consistently. The fifth technique is interaction design that maintains engagement without losing control. Passive audiences lose attention quickly, but interactive presentations can spiral out of control if not managed properly. Elite presenters design interaction that serves their objectives while keeping audiences engaged and on track. Design strategic interaction through planned questions, polls, discussions, and exercises that advance your presentation goals. Ask questions that have clear right answers to build agreement and momentum. Use polls to gauge audience opinion and adjust your approach accordingly. Create brief discussion opportunities that let people process information socially. Include exercises that help audiences apply your concepts immediately. Always maintain control by setting clear time boundaries and bringing discussion back to your main points. The sixth skill is technology integration that enhances rather than dominates your message. Visual aids, slides, and multimedia can amplify your impact or distract from your message depending on how you use them. Elite presenters use technology as a supporting actor, not the star of their presentation. Integrate technology strategically by using visuals that clarify and reinforce your verbal message rather than replacing it. Create slides with minimal text and powerful images that support your narrative. Use animations and transitions sparingly and purposefully. Include multimedia elements that add emotional impact or credibility to your points. Always have backup plans for technology failures, so your presentation's success doesn't depend on perfect technical execution. The seventh principle is audience resistance management that turns skeptics into advocates. Every audience includes skeptics, critics, and people with different agendas. Rather than avoiding this resistance, elite presenters acknowledge it directly and use it to strengthen their credibility and message. Manage audience resistance by addressing objections proactively and inviting challenging questions. Acknowledge different perspectives early in your presentation to show awareness and credibility. When someone challenges you, thank them for the question and use it as an opportunity to reinforce your key points. Turn difficult questions into teaching moments that benefit the entire audience. Your graceful handling of resistance often persuades skeptics more effectively than perfect presentations with no challenges. The eighth technique is memorable conclusion creation that ensures lasting impact. Most presentations end weakly with "Any questions?" or generic thank yous. But elite presenters craft conclusions that cement their message and inspire action. Your ending determines what people remember and whether they act on your ideas. Create memorable conclusions using the Summarize Challenge Inspire framework. Summarize your key points briefly and clearly, so people leave with crystal clear takeaways. Challenge your audience with specific actions they can take immediately to apply your ideas. Inspire them with a vision of what's possible if they implement your recommendations. End with confidence and energy that leaves them excited about moving forward rather than glad the presentation is over. The final mastery level is authentic expertise projection that builds unshakable credibility. Audiences can sense whether you truly know your subject or are just repeating what you've read elsewhere. Elite presenters demonstrate depth of understanding that makes their expertise undeniable and their recommendations trustworthy. Project authentic expertise by sharing specific examples from your direct experience, offering insights that go beyond common knowledge, acknowledging the limitations of your recommendations, and connecting your topic to broader trends and implications. When your expertise is genuine, your confidence becomes authentic, and your influence becomes inevitable. Presentation domination isn't about being perfect on stage. It's about serving your audience so effectively that they can't help but be influenced by your message. Master these skills, and you'll transform from someone who gives presentations to someone who changes minds and inspires action. Chapter 14. Relationship Acceleration. Building deep connections at lightning speed. Most people think deep relationships require years to develop. But elite relationship builders understand that connection is about quality of interaction, not quantity of time. They have systematic approaches for creating trust, understanding, and mutual value that compress months of normal relationship building into days or weeks. The foundation of relationship acceleration is recognizing that all meaningful relationships are built on three pillars: trust, value, and emotional connection. While these usually develop slowly through repeated interactions, elite relationship builders know how to establish all three pillars quickly and authentically. The first principle is rapid trust establishment through strategic vulnerability and competence demonstration. Trust comes from believing someone is both capable and benevolent, that they can help you and want to help you. Elite relationship builders show both qualities early and authentically in their interactions. Establish rapid trust by sharing appropriate vulnerability that shows your humanity while demonstrating competence through valuable contributions. Tell brief stories about your mistakes and what you learned from them. Offer insights or assistance that clearly benefits the other person. Ask thoughtful questions that show genuine interest in their success. Follow through quickly and thoroughly on any commitments you make, no matter how small. The second technique is value front-loading that immediately demonstrates your worth to others. Instead of gradually revealing your value over time, elite relationship builders find ways to provide significant value early in relationships, creating immediate appreciation and reciprocity motivation. Front-load value by identifying what the other person most needs or wants, then finding ways to provide it quickly. This might be information they're seeking, introductions to people who can help them, resources that solve their problems, or insights that help them see opportunities. The key is giving first without asking for anything in return, creating positive reciprocity debt. The third skill is emotional resonance creation through strategic empathy and shared experience. People connect most deeply with those who understand their emotional reality and can relate to their experiences. Elite relationship builders quickly identify emotional common ground and build connections around shared understanding. Create emotional resonance by listening for emotional themes in what people share and reflecting understanding of their feelings, not just their facts. When they express frustration, acknowledge the feeling before addressing the situation. When they share excitement, match their energy and enthusiasm. Look for shared experiences, challenges, or values that create natural connection points. The fourth principle is mutual benefit identification that aligns your interests with theirs. The strongest relationships are those where both parties genuinely benefit from the connection. Elite relationship builders quickly identify these mutual benefits and make them explicit, creating clear reasons for both people to invest in the relationship. Identify mutual benefits by exploring how your skills, resources, networks, or experiences might complement theirs. Look for ways you can help each other achieve goals, solve problems, or access opportunities. Make these potential benefits explicit in your conversations. It sounds like you're trying to expand into the European market. I have several contacts there who might be helpful, and I'd love to learn from your experience with product launches. The fifth technique is communication style adaptation that creates unconscious comfort. People feel most comfortable with those who communicate in similar patterns to their own. Elite relationship builders quickly identify others' communication preferences and adapt accordingly without losing their authenticity. Adapt communication styles by matching their pace, energy level, detail preference, and decision-making approach. If they speak quickly and focus on big-picture concepts, adjust your communication to be more rapid and conceptual. If they prefer detailed analysis and methodical discussion, slow down and provide more specifics. This adaptation should feel natural, not forced. The sixth skill is shared experience creation that bonds people through common activities. Relationships deepen through shared experiences that create joint memories and emotional connections. Elite relationship builders are strategic about creating these experiences rather than waiting for them to happen naturally. Create shared experiences by suggesting activities that allow you to work together, learn together, or overcome challenges together. This might be collaborating on projects, attending events together, working through problems jointly, or sharing new experiences. The key is choosing activities that require cooperation and create positive shared memories. The seventh principle is relationship maintenance systems that keep connections strong over time. Building relationships quickly is only valuable if you can maintain them effectively. Elite relationship builders have systems for staying connected and continuing to provide value even when they're not working together actively. Maintain relationships systematically by creating regular touchpoints that provide ongoing value. This might be sharing relevant articles, making helpful introductions, checking in on important projects, or inviting them to valuable events. Use calendar systems to remind yourself to reach out periodically with something useful rather than just social contact. The eighth technique is network integration that amplifies relationship value. Individual relationships become more valuable when they're part of broader networks. Elite relationship builders connect their contacts strategically, increasing the value they provide while strengthening their position as network connectors. Integrate networks by making strategic introductions between people in your network who could benefit from knowing each other. When you connect two people who create value for each other, you strengthen your relationship with both. This positions you as a valuable connector and increases the likelihood that others will reciprocate with introductions that benefit you. The final mastery level is authentic relationship building that creates genuine, long-term connections. All the techniques in the world won't create lasting relationships if they're not built on authentic interest in others' success and well-being. Elite relationship builders genuinely care about the people they connect with, which makes their strategic approach feel natural rather than manipulative. Build authentic relationships by developing genuine interest in others' success, challenges, and goals. Focus on how you can help rather than what you can get. Celebrate others' victories and provide support during their challenges. When your relationship building is driven by authentic care for others, your strategic approaches feel natural and create lasting connections. Relationship acceleration isn't about manipulating people into liking you. It's about efficiently building the trust, value, and emotional connection that form the foundation of all meaningful relationships. Master these principles, and you'll build deeper professional and personal networks faster than you thought possible. Chapter 15. Communication Mastery Integration. The Elite Performer's Operating System. Everything you've learned in this audiobook represents individual tools and techniques, but true communication mastery comes from integrating these skills into a seamless operating system that works automatically under any circumstances. Elite communicators don't think about which technique to use in each moment. They've developed intuitive mastery that adapts fluidly to any situation. The foundation of communication mastery integration is understanding that excellence comes not from perfect execution of individual techniques, but from developing the meta skills that allow you to read situations accurately, select appropriate strategies quickly, and adjust dynamically as circumstances change. The first principle is situational pattern recognition that instantly categorizes communication contexts. Every communication situation falls into recognizable patterns, and once you can identify the pattern, you know which tools and approaches will be most effective. Elite communicators develop extensive pattern libraries that allow instant situation assessment, master pattern recognition, by consciously categorizing every significant communication encounter you have. Is this a negotiation, persuasion, conflict resolution, relationship building, or authority establishment situation? What are the stakes, power dynamics, emotional states, and constraints? The more patterns you consciously recognize and categorize, the faster your unconscious pattern matching becomes. The second technique is strategic flexibility that adapts to changing dynamics in real time. Communication situations are fluid, and what starts as one type of interaction often evolves into something completely different. Elite communicators read these shifts and adjust their approach seamlessly without losing effectiveness. Develop strategic flexibility by practicing transition between different communication modes within single conversations. Start a presentation and shift to negotiation when questions arise. Begin a casual conversation that becomes conflict resolution when tensions emerge. The ability to change approaches fluidly while maintaining your objectives separates masters from practitioners. The third skill is systematic preparation that creates authentic confidence in any situation. Elite communicators don't just prepare content. They prepare psychologically and strategically for the full range of dynamics they might encounter. This preparation creates unshakable confidence because they're ready for anything. Systematize preparation by developing pre-communication routines that address content, psychology, and strategy. Review your objectives and success criteria. Anticipate the other party's goals, concerns, and likely responses. Prepare your key points and supporting evidence. Visualize positive outcomes and practice responses to challenges. This systematic approach creates confidence that comes from genuine readiness. The fourth principle is emotional mastery that maintains peak performance under pressure. All communication techniques break down if you lose emotional control. Elite communicators have developed emotional regulation skills that allow them to stay strategic and effective even in high-stress, high-stakes situations. Master emotional regulation through consistent practice of stress inoculation and recovery techniques. Regularly put yourself in challenging communication situations to build tolerance for pressure. Develop physical and mental techniques for maintaining calm under stress. Practice recovering quickly when you do get emotionally triggered. Your emotional mastery determines your communication ceiling. The fifth technique is value creation focus that makes every interaction beneficial for all parties. The most influential communicators are those who consistently create value for others, not just themselves. This requires shifting from a taking mindset to a giving mindset while still achieving your objectives. Focus on value creation by starting every communication with the question, how can this interaction benefit everyone involved? Look for ways to help others achieve their goals while achieving your own. Share insights, make connections, provide resources, or offer assistance that goes beyond the immediate transaction. This approach builds long-term influence that compounds over time. The sixth skill is continuous improvement through systematic feedback analysis. Elite communicators treat every interaction as a learning opportunity and have systems for capturing and applying lessons learned. They get better continuously rather than plateauing at good enough. Implement continuous improvement by conducting brief after-action reviews following important communications. What went well? What could have been better? What did you learn about the other person, the situation, or your own performance? Keep a communication journal that tracks patterns in your successes and challenges. This systematic reflection accelerates your development exponentially. The seventh principle is authentic influence that builds sustainable relationships and results. True communication mastery is built on authenticity, not manipulation. Elite communicators have aligned their techniques with their genuine values and goals, creating congruence that others can sense and trust. Develop authentic influence by ensuring your communication techniques serve your genuine values and goals, not just short-term tactical objectives. Use your skills to help others make better decisions, not to manipulate them into decisions that don't serve them. Build influence through consistent demonstration of competence and care, rather than strategic positioning alone. The eighth technique is teaching and mentoring that solidifies your own mastery while developing others. The highest level of mastery is the ability to teach others effectively. Elite communicators regularly share their knowledge and help others develop, which reinforces their own skills while expanding their influence. Solidify mastery through teaching by actively mentoring others in communication skills, sharing insights through writing or speaking, and creating frameworks that help others understand and apply what you've learned. Teaching forces you to understand concepts more deeply and gives you practice explaining complex ideas clearly. The final integration principle is legacy thinking that focuses on long-term impact rather than short-term wins. Elite communicators think beyond individual interactions to consider how their communication patterns build reputation, relationships, and influence over time. They optimize for sustainable excellence rather than quick victories. Think legacy by considering how each communication interaction contributes to your long-term reputation and relationships. What kind of communicator do you want to be known as? What impact do you want to have on others? How can you use your communication skills to create lasting positive change? This perspective guides your choices toward approaches that build sustainable influence and meaningful impact. Communication mastery is not a destination. It's a journey of continuous development and refinement. You now have the tools, techniques, and frameworks needed to communicate with elite-level effectiveness. The difference between knowing these principles and mastering them is consistent practice, systematic improvement, and authentic application. Your communication skills determine your ability to influence, lead, build relationships, and create value in every area of your life. Master these skills, and you'll master your ability to shape your world through the power of strategic communication. The conversation starts now.